Welcome to Somerset Showcase. There have been a lot of complaints about discoloration of the water in people's homes recently, and so today we are going to take you through where the water comes from, the process it goes through to get to your homes, the problems with the water, and what the water department is doing to improve the water quality. So we are here where the water actually comes from at the reservoir, and we are here with an operator from the water department, Jon Reback, who is going to tell us a little bit about that. John, can you tell me how does the water get into the reservoir?
Of course. So right here is our tower. We have a 16-inch main that is gravity fed from here. We're up about 75 feet from an elevation, and it gets gravity fed from this tower to the plant where you see, if you turn around, you'll see the plant over there, and it goes into that building, and then that's where it goes through the filters and gets treated.
So how much water is there in the reservoir?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure how many gallons, but we're about 15 inches below full right now currently. Normally in the summertime, we're usually about 140 inches below full. To give you an idea of how wet it's been, we've got a lot of water basically. Maybe, I don't know, 800 million gallons I would say, but that's just a rough guess.
So we've got plenty of water. We've
yeah.
had more rain this summer than we've had in a long time, so that helps to fill it up as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Oh yeah, we got all the water in the world, so.
So the water comes from the reservoir, and what does it do next?
Basically, okay, so if you can see here, this is our tower. About 40 feet below is our intake port, and it goes from there, gets gravity fed right into the plant in a straight line from this section, and then in a moment we will show you where it comes in to the plant.
Now you're also having some work done on the dam here.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yep. So we're on the top of our levee. If you pan around, you can see where we're at. Basically over here, what we're going to do is put big cement pillars on the inside of the levee, build it up about 2 feet. That way, in the future, if we have any big storms or any catastrophic events, the levee won't break, which would not be good.
So can you tell me what is done to protect the reservoir? How is this water protected?
So basically, we have to patrol it ourselves. There's no trespassing. A lot of people want to swim and fish and ride horses around it, but unfortunately it's a protected water source, so you can't be anywhere near it. We've been buying land up all around it as much as we can over the years to protect it. So we have to patrol ourselves, make sure that if someone's out here that shouldn't be, we got to kick them out, unfortunately. But we do as much as we can with what we got.
Are tests done of the water?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, we have to comply with DEP regulations, EPA regulations. So we're constantly getting tests from them, getting delivered to us, say, hey, you need a test for this now. So we have to send it out to another lab. Sometimes they're out in Denver, sometimes they're in Rhode Island, but we're constantly sending them out to independent labs and for them to test it, as well as all the testing we have to do in-house as well. So, it's just constant testing.
I bet there's some big fish in here. There's probably some fishermen that would probably...
Oh, I can't confirm or deny, but I have heard there are some big bass.
Okay, so we've had a lot of rain that has helped to fill it up during the summer, but what happens during other times of the year when there's not as much rain?
During a normal year, what happens is from May to November, we basically draw the reservoir down, and then around November we have an intake station up in Dighton by the Segregated River. And we get that up and running, and we usually pump about 6 to 7 million gallons a day. It comes in on the north side of the res, and that's basically fill it up from November to May is when we pump out 7 million gallons a day to fill this back up to its max level.
Another reason why we have so much water now is because the power plants no longer use what they used to. And I think the Brayton Point Power Station, didn't they used to use a couple million gallons of water a day? So that must help with keeping this reservoir high.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we back when I first started here, 2008, we were using about, in the summertime, we'd be at about 4 million gallons a day. Now we're 1.8, 2 million on a good day. They would easily use a million a day, like even in the wintertime, summer, winter, you name it. So they were our biggest customer, for sure.
They paid a lot of money to the water department. I think a lot of people don't realize, besides losing tax revenue, when the power plants closed down, we also lost a lot of revenue that was coming in from the water that they were buying from the town.
That's correct. From what I was told, basically the power plant subsidized the water department, is what I was told when I first started here. I asked the question, what happens if the power plant was to go down and shut down? And I was told, you see those 2 towers they just built? They're not going anywhere for the next 30 years. So I was like, oh, all right. So no one expected them to close. And when they did, it was a big hit for the water department.
This is part of the reason why they're looking to sell water to other places now too, because we have so much of it. I remember Scott O'Brien, when he was on the Water and Sewer Commission, he used to joke to me, it would be good if we could have a brewery come in town, because we need someone to sell some of the water to, because we have so much of it and we're not bringing in as much revenue as we were.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, if we could get another big user in town, that would be fantastic. Or sell to other towns, like I know some area communities do get desperate when in the summertime when it's not a wet year. So yeah, if we could sell to other communities, that would be a blessing.
We are at the treatment plant now, where the water comes in from the reservoir through a 16-inch pipe. John, can you tell me how that process works?
All right, so basically right where we were before, it comes down the levee, gets gravity fed through the foundation here. It comes up through the foundation, comes this way. So right here, it's where we add our chemicals. We have our coagulant injection point right here. The coagulant acts almost as a magnet. All the particles that are in the water basically get clumped together, and it basically gets lumped together. And then underneath us is a flash mixer. So the flash mixer makes everything get basically knocks it all together. It makes those little particles combine to big clumps. And then from there, it goes into our filters. So if you come this way, just one step. These are upflow clarifiers. So it's basically a 2-stage filtration system we have here. They built this plant in 1994. So the water goes to the flash mixer, and then it goes into the clarifier that you'll see right here. And what it does is it's basically a bunch of tiny little beads that, and then there's a screen. So the water gets forced through these beads, and the beads will filter out the organic matter that the coagulant clumped together, and then it gets filtered out, and that's your first stage. And we can go up the stairs, and we'll show you what the water looks like after it goes through the upflow clarifier.
And they are going to be rebuilding these clarifiers?
I believe they're going to be rehabbing them. I mean, they still work great. They're just, 25 years old or however. So the beads have to be replaced, the screens have to be replaced. It's just, a lot of rust is going on, it's old. So we're going to have a company come in, repaint everything, go through all the internal structures and replace all the guts of it, basically. Make them brand new.
Okay, so let's go see the water.
This is what the clarifier looks like, the top of it at least. You can see that little stainless steel screen that's under there. It's being held down by these I-beams and that grate. So the water is being squeezed through all those billions of beads that are under there. and then it comes through and it's filtered, and this is our first stage. This is not drinkable right now. Obviously you can see the algae and stuff. This is just basically the first strainer and filter of this process. And then if you come this way, you can see our filters on this side, on this half, and what you're doing now is this is a downflow filter, and we have about 12 inches of anthracite, coal, sand, and other mixed media that the water will go through and filter through. And then once it goes through this, we hit it with some hypochlorite, which is bleach, chlorine, and then that's when it's drinkable. So I'll show you where it comes out.
I just noticed a lot of rust around the...
Yes, so this is just, what happens is we have our flushes and backwashes, and we have these big air blowers that I wish we had an event going on for right now. I could show you guys, it's easy to show. But we use basically air and water to agitate the media, and that will release anything that gets trapped in it. But when that happens, it bubbles around, so water basically hits all this metal, and water and air, eventually over 25 years, you get rust, and it's just nature. So that's why you see it rust. And but this all stuff is gonna get sandblasted, repainted, and be like new. This is, if the pipe you're seeing here now is below the filter, so the water gets through all that media and it comes out this blue pipe, and at this point you can't drink it just yet because it has been disinfected, but it's basically pure clean water. And then it comes through here, goes down, and basically we're standing on a big pool right now, and that's where we inject our hypochlorite, and that's when it becomes drinkable. So this whole building is basically a big swimming pool underneath us. So I think it's about, I want to say this clarifier right here, or this clear well right here is 500,000 gallons clear well, I want to say, underneath us. And then we actually, on the main building, there's another clear well, which is, I want to say, 200,000 gallon clear well. And then from there, that's when we pump it out. And I'll show you guys our main high surface pumps. You might not be able to hear me right now, but these are our 3 high service pumps. Right now we're running pump number 2. And today we're probably pumping about 2 million gallons a day. Is what we're set at. I think it's, I want to say we're about 2,000 gallons a minute is what we're pumping out currently. So it's it's a 250 horsepower pump, and yeah, that's it. Basically, this is a computer integration system. It shows us what's going on in the plant. It shows us all the pumps and the chemical feeds and all of our levels. We have analyzers everywhere in this plant, so we do a physical check, but we also have an on-the-line analyzers everywhere that will, if something starts to fail or it starts to go out parameters, we have a big alarm that starts to blare, and it lets us know we got to start get it to work and making repairs. So yeah, but that's basically the computer system that runs the show. It's all basically automated, which is nice. Now there's going to be a backwash event, which is our basically the way we clean our filters and our clarifiers. If you were to see the water, you're going to be disgusted by it, but that's what you get with surface water. So all the fish poo and organic matter, everything that gets brought in and into it gets stuck in the clarifier, basically gets shaken out using air and water, and you'll see it. So let's go. is our chemical room. We got chemical tanks over here. This is our coagulant. And then over there, if you come this way a little bit, you can see behind that, that's our hydroxide. And then the room over here is where we keep our hypochlorite, which is basically bleach, and that's for disinfection. So yeah, that's kind of the 2-bit tour.
This is typical of some of the 6 to 8 miles of steel piping that we have in town that is a good portion of the problem that we have with discolored water. In a minute, we're going to do a very elementary test so that people can get a sense of what happens when the nice clean water that leaves our plant enters the system and how it can pick up sedimentation that's in the pipe. That's what this demonstration is designed to prove. It's not scientific, but it's just basic, basic science kind of situation that people can be able to relate to and get a sense of what it is that we're facing when we talk about how does that turbidity end up in their water supply.
Yes.
Right off the top.
Shows the clarity of the water as it leaves the plant after it's fully treated. The beaker on the right is the sample that we just ran through the pipe, and you can see the difference in quality. And that's just a matter of us simply pouring water through this pipe. Had that pipe been under pressure, all this material inside would scour out even more, and you'd see even more of a distance. And obviously, when the pipe is actually in service, it is always under pressure, and you constantly get that scouring through it. So that can certainly exacerbate the problem, even from what you see here. But if we come back in a half an hour, you'll see how much is in there, because it will have settled out, which is not unlike what it does in the main during periods of low flow. The water that's in that pipe, let's say at night, for instance, not being used, those particles settle out. In the morning, folks begin to use their water supply, and it reintroduces all that sediment back into the water. It literally entrains it so that now it's back in the system. When you turn your water on, it comes out.
And so you've tested this water after it's come out of pipes into people's homes. What do you find?
Well, there's no need to test, because the proof of the pudding's in the tasting. Every place where we're putting this piping in typically has reported problems with turbidity over time. So, I mean, just from looking at that, and also other places where we have taken samples, it pretty much tells you that there's rust and turbidity in the system. This is a section of pipe that came from Annette Avenue. It is roughly 2-inch galvanized steel pipe that has probably been in the ground since 1939 or somewhere of that era. It's being replaced with brand new C900 PVC 6-inch water main that will be going in place to replace this pipe. So the people in that area should notice an increase in their water pressure and their volume, and in addition, any problems they had with turbidity should go away.
How much of this 2-inch pipe do we have in town?
Based on the numbers that we have, it's probably between 6 and 8 miles of it.
You're looking to replace all that?
Ultimately, yes. It's just going to be a function of how fast we can able to do it. We can do it based on the money we have available to do it. So
That will help improve the quality of the water?
yes, that's why we would do it. It would improve the water quality, also the pressure, and also the volume as well. Because
the selectmen just approved opera money that will to roughly 12 streets that have this 2-inch pipe?
That is correct. We have a list already prepared based on streets that over the years have been problematic. That's how we formed the list. And all those streets will be getting brand new 6-inch PVC. And also I want to emphasize new services from the new main to their property line to connect up to their existing services that are on their property. So that'll all be brand new. So when it's done, any problems that they have been experiencing should be pretty much taken care of.
And these 2-inch pipes, they can't service fire hydrants, but the 6-inch ones will be able to.
100%. On all of these streets that don't have any means of fire protection, we are going to be adding a new hydrant as well. I don't know if you saw the stack of hydrants in the backyard. So we just purchased those. They're brand spanking new. And any streets that do require a new hydrant, like for instance this one on Annette Avenue, they're also getting a brand new hydrant on that street.
Is the water that comes through these pipes drinkable?
It's not palatable, certainly, maybe taste-wise and how you see it. But when the water leaves this plant, it 100% meets all the requirements that it is supposed to meet. So it's not, and by the way, we do testing throughout the system for bacteria, chlorine residual, that the state picks out those sites for us, so we're mandated to do that testing. And we always come back with flying colors. So we can understand that when people see that discoloration, it just is not something that is very appetizing. But as far as it being harmful to you, the answer to that is no, not to the best of my knowledge and belief. And more importantly, we have to submit all our information to Mass DEP. All the sampling that we do, right, John, all that goes to Mass DEP for their perusal. And keep in mind that they establish the sites where we do all this testing, so it's a coordinated effort. It's not just us going out there grabbing a sample and, here, try this. No, they tell us where they want the samples to be taken and what they want us to sample for, and we do that. We send it in, and like I said, we haven't had any issues.
But it seems like there's been more complaints about discolored water this summer. Is there a reason for that?
We're actually looking into that because, one of the side effects of us doing our new hydrant flushing program, and I'm sorry, hydrant replacement program, is that all of these hydrants in town are being tested. They're being flowed, in other words. So what can happen is when you flow those hydrants, what happens is you get a flow increase in that particular area, and it picks up more of these particles and distributes them. Now, if the hydrants are just left alone, then that water becomes quiescent, no problem. But you open that hydrant, it activates that material. So that is, one of the reasons that we suspect. The other thing is, we've done a lot of work up on Hot and Cold Lane, and we suspect that as a result of that, it's the old thing, to make an omelet, you have to break a couple of eggs. So we think that as a result of that work taking place, that may have introduced additional sedimentation into the piping system, and we're seeing the effects of it now. So in order to solve the THM problem, which we're going to discuss in a few minutes, it's a possibility that because of the piping work we've had to do, that it might have caused an issue with sedimentation.
So it's not just places where we have 2-inch pipes where there's problems. There are in other areas in town too, because we have different diameters for the
Right.
pipes.
The pipe is old, and it's predominantly ferric, which means it's either iron or steel. We also have a fair amount of transite pipe, which is asbestos-based pipe. Typically, we don't have a problem with that in terms of tuberculation and rusting and rotting. It stays pretty clean. The problem with that is because it's so fragile, it breaks a lot. So when it breaks, every time there's a break and you turn the water off, that's another opportunity for disturbance in the system to take place. and you can get a shot of sedimentation. So all these things, really work in concert. We have large bore pipe that has been in place 70, 80 years, maybe even longer, and that piping is cast iron, and over time, it just rusts out. There's no other way of putting it. So while it's sound, it's not going to collapse and it'll continue to do its job. You are going to get circumstances where you're going to get sedimentation. So the long-range plan is this. This piping, because of its diameter, its age, and its obvious condition, along with the transite pipe, we can deal with this and change it out, put brand new pipes in. The big bore piping, a little different animal. So the way we intend to treat that is we're going to clean that pipe and line it. So that cleaning process will remove all that rust and scale, and then the lining process will put a cementitious lining in the pipe so that the water in the pipe is not in direct contact with the cast iron wall of that pipe. So it should reduce the amount of deterioration leading to sedimentation that you get in the piping system. As I mentioned, those are coupons that we cut out of the sidewall of a pipe when we have to do work on the pipe, like to install a new valve or some other appurtenance. So we keep those, and we sort of put them in our bad file, so people can take a look and see when we talk about it that in this case you have rust. This is also rust. I mentioned that cement lining to you. You can see on these pipes, these sections of pipe here, where this had some of the cement lining, but you can see where over time it can wear off. This piping had some, looks like some kind of a bituminous interior coating. So this is what we hope to accomplish when we clean and line these pipes, primarily the large bore pipes that we can't really change out.
Now, is there any lead in the system?
To the best of my knowledge and belief, there is not. But we presently have a study in place because there might be some old lead goosenecks still in play. Fair enough, Bob?
Oh, yeah.
But not necessarily the services themselves. We've changed a lot of those out. But right now we have a study that is ongoing to make that determination of whether or not there is any lead in the system. And if there is, then there will be some grants that we're going to chase, so that we can go in and, now that we know where they are, because we have to be sure of the problem first, right? We have to be sure there is the problem. Then if there is, we'll go in and alleviate that problem, hopefully with some grant money that can be provided from the feds. So when we talk about these things, it's not that we're making this up to dramatize. This is what we deal with every day in the system. So we're not really surprised when people call and they complain. We're not happy about it. We do everything we can to alleviate it. But it's when you're dealing with stuff like this, what can you expect?
So how long would it take to line all the pipes in town?
Well, first of all, the whole process begins by identifying good candidates for relining. And that would mean that we have to go through and take more of those coupons to make sure the pipes are structurally sound, because we wouldn't want to be going in and relining a pipe that was not worth it. I don't think that we have many pipes like that. I think in most cases we would be able to line those, clean them, and line those pipes pretty efficiently. You ask how long it would take. It's going to be a function of how much money we have and when we have it. You have to keep in the back of your mind that it costs approximately, and we've had a contractor come in and give us some numbers, approximately $250 to $350 a linear foot to clean and line decent size piping. It can be more than that in very urban settings. So, for instance, if we're in the center of town and we're doing it, that those numbers could increase. My point in saying all that is, we would have to do projects in bites. This is the way that the board is trying to proceed, because we feel it's going to be best for the town in terms of what they can afford. We talked about getting to a situation where if we had $120 million tomorrow, such as what was recommended in the report that was done for the integrated water management resource study a few years ago, it's about $120 million. If you had all that in one tranche, then perhaps you're looking at a project that might take 2 to 3 years, but it would be over. It would be like very intense design and construction. A lot of places in town would be torn up. So as we
$120 million replaces all the pipes in town rather than just lines them as
no, that is a composite number. And what I mean by that is that includes improvements to the to the water treatment plant, replacement of pipes that need replacement, and all this is all outlined in this. So I'm just giving you the Reader's Digest version now, and of course relining pipes as appropriate, and replacing even some of the big bore stuff if we thought that it was appropriate, to do so. So it's really a function of how much money the town would have available to do all this. As I mentioned, the board realizes the situation in town, the financial situation, that in order to do all this work in one go, the way the board looks at it, would be an extreme hardship on the town to have to digest. Not unlike the school situation,
Yeah.
right? So we're trying to avoid that on the heels of what's happened. So it's the old thing, how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. That is the board's approach. We want to go slow. We want to do targeted improvements. So in specific areas where we know we have problems with galvanized steel pipe, such as we've pointed out, and such as we have earmarked our $1 million of funding that we just got of ARPA funds, we will continue to do that, so that we're always, every year we're doing some kind of a pipe replacement project. So we're going to build that into our budgets going forward, so that once again we're looking at smaller bites,
Yeah.
and because the improvements will be made, yes. As far as the when the town will notice it, it will be incremental, but over time it happens. So to us, when I say us, I mean the board. That would seem to be a better approach than asking for that $120 million up front, which would allow us to do a bigger project, but we just feel that would not be in the town's best interest. The other side of the coin is obviously the town has to be patient in terms of what it is we're trying to accomplish. I hope the town will be able to appreciate that we don't want to overburden them, with higher rates and everything else. And coupled with that, we're very active in pursuing grants and low interest SRF money. So our two representatives, Representative Haddad, and Senator Mike Rodrigues, they go to bat for us. It's just a phone call. Many times, they'll call me and they'll say, "Paul, there's a grant coming up. Can you use the money?" I said, "Put me down." "Well, do you have a project?" I said, "Yes. Give me 5 minutes. I'll send you 7. That we can do." So we can continue to expect a lot of help from them, and then with modest rate increases, as we might expect to have to occur, we can do this incremental and targeted pipeline replacement and upgrades, and even relining as appropriate. But I want to emphasize the word targeting, because the $120 million is a shotgun approach. In other words, this is what the report says. We know we have so many linear feet of this, so many linear feet of that, and just blow it all out and just get it all done. But once again, I want to emphasize the downside to the town would be, I believe, a very crippling financial situation, to say nothing of just having the town torn up for 2 or 3 years. We are looking at street repaving, cross lots, where we have piping and easements, all that would have to be dug up. Some of those easements go through people's property. So it's just a more upsetting, in addition to financially prohibitive process if we do that. So our approach, we want to stay the course, slow and steady, and do it with our own, in our own reasonable time frame, so that the people can absorb the cost for this, as opposed to a big hit.
Are there certain areas of town where the pipes are older than in others? Would those be done first? Is that?
I would say that we would look at everything. When I say targeted, all these, when we do get calls from people in town, and we can identify an area that might have, the 2.5-inch pipe, those are the areas that we would focus on. So I wouldn't want to draw the conclusion that just because especially some of the old cast iron big bore stuff, that just because it's 100 years old, that it needs replacing. I wouldn't make that parallel, because it may be perfectly fine. So we're not going to take it out, just because it's old. We're going to test it. As I mentioned, we'll take a coupon out of it, and have our engineers look at it structurally to make sure that it is a candidate for relining. And if so, you can get another 50 years out of it. If you look at the history of cast iron pipe, and in a lot of the cast iron pipe manufacturers, they're more than willing to tell you how old some of their pipe is, and some of it goes back to 200 or 300 years old. And some of these old fountains in Rome, just old pit cast iron pipe that is still functioning. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
It's going to be more targeted areas where we know there's a problem, as opposed to age of pipe. That is not the only criteria.
And years ago, what we used to do is there would be streets that would come up for paving. We'd automatically go in, change the mains, change the hydrants, change all the service lines. For example, Main Street is one of those examples. Main Street was an older street. The fire flow was a little deficient. So what we did is we went in there, we changed all those mains and hydrants, and that's how we did Main Street area. We also did some spotted streets here and there when we had the 2-inch lines that the town wanted to reconstruct the road. So if they were going into reconstruction of the road, what we would do is we would renew all the utilities on the water side in those areas. So that's how our approach has been, and it's try to keep that good balance of money that comes into down, so that we don't burden the residents with those type of repairs and improvements. We have an old system. We date our system. The first pipes were probably laid in the 1920, I think 26, 27. That ran from Dighton all the way down 138. It ran through the village. I believe from the village it went up South Street, down County for a while, and then up Reed Street all the way to Lee's River. Now that's the original pipeline that went in. So that would have been 1927, 28 vintage pipe.
Now, the sediment we talk about that's in the pipe, what's in that, and how does it get there?
It's primarily rust. It is just simple oxidation when you put water in contact with ferric material, which, as I mentioned, most of our pipe is. That's what can happen. There might be other non-harmful constituents in there, because, as I mentioned, we do all our testing, we submit everything. So I'm not saying there couldn't be some. Even during construction, we've noticed, we've pulled stuff out of pipes. I'm sure Bob can back this up. We've pulled stuff out of pipe that was in there since when the pipe was built.
Yeah.
So, rocks, for instance, there could be dirt. Somebody cuts in a corporation, or somebody cuts in a valve, and you're always going to get a certain amount of detritus that's going to enter that piping system.
Yeah, it's iron and manganese. Primarily what we're seeing now is an iron and manganese mix. It's a naturally occurring element. People have to remember that prior to this facility being built and turned online in 1968, the water was unfiltered water from Dayton, and then after the reservoir was built, there was a year and a half that it was unfiltered water that came from the reservoir through the pipes. The majority of the system was built prior to the treatment plant went online. So some of that sediment is still in the pipe. And what happens is when you get a reversal of flow or you get an increase of flow, some of that sediment breaks off. And that's what we see. And that's why it's diligent to get out there, call us. We get people out there to flush it.
Yep.
And we'll look at what is actually happening in the pipe. Sometimes it's a deterioration of pipe. Some of the photos that I saw on Facebook, I did a little research, I looked up those addresses, and primarily those are on streets that have that 2-inch pipe that you see. So you would see that brown or black, and that's going to be a deterioration of the pipe from the inside out. You'll see that the outside of those pipes, it's all covered with earth, etc., that's pretty much stuck to the iron.
Yeah.
That's what happens with that type of pipe. When you start seeing the larger mains where they have a coating on the outside, it's usually like a tar, etc., you don't see that material on the outside. But the pipe itself, on the inside, they do collect a little bit of material, and there's a lot of material that came off over time. And that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing that interaction of that water going back and forth, and taking some of that material, moving it up the line, and then moving it back down the line.
And you've been involved with the water department for how long?
I started here in 1980, and I retired in 2018. I started as the maintenance operator in the water plant, and 6 years after I started here, I became the superintendent and plant manager of the plant. And I've been involved in a lot of the upgrades. We did the system in the back, the treatment plant, when I first became superintendent. That was a project people don't understand. It takes a long time to get that project off the ground. That project was put online in '95. It was really started in 1990 when we started discussing it, going through phases with DEP, how to best do it, etc. After that, we did the booster pump station, which was tied into that. And what we had to do was we had to manage not only the projects, but the funding for the projects. So at the time, there was a selectman, Mr. Matty, and we met with them because the selectmen have to authorize the bond note and borrowing. And they wanted us to just, keep it easy on the borrowing, etc., so that we wouldn't burden the residents. And we still see that. Some of the projects that I did when I was here, we're still paying for because some of those project bond notes go out 30 years. We did the intake station, we did the well field, we've done tanks. As a matter of fact, the first project I ever set foot on was the tank in Dayton, and that was a very interesting project because that was the first time that we rental purchased a water tank, and it was something that was very unique, and the attorneys did some language, etc., that we got through. So there have been a lot of projects that go through. And one of the bigger projects that we did with pipeline was the pipeline project from Whetstone Hill Road all the way down County to Reed Street. We did the interconnections at Chase, Almy, and Whetstone because what we found, and especially on Almy Road, was that the water wasn't going in a straight line. It was going through the side streets, diverting back and forth, and that caused a lot of sediment and issues to be in that area and then go through the entire town. So that was one of the big improvements. And that, I think we're still paying that bond note. And there's others. We got water tank bond notes. So we have to look at it,
The
and
wastewater is
wastewater is going to be a big one that's going to come up now. And we have to look at it. We have to manage the money. We have to manage the system, and that's what we have to do. So what they're seeing now, it's very unfortunate. I believe that most of the people here and the commissioner themselves are really, sorry that for the inconvenience that we have, but what has been done is primarily been done to try to eliminate the THM issue. And what has happened is, and the engineers have approved it, the state looked at it, everybody's looked at it. What we're trying to do is take the water, put it up to the plant, up to the tanks, from the plant, and then take the water, shut the plant down, and let the water come backwards through the system. We believe in some instances that may be causing some of this sediment, etc., that we're seeing because we push the water in one direction.
Yeah.
For 16 hours.
The migration
Right.
of that sediment, because it's
Right.
always there. It's just the migration of it.
Right, and what happens when it comes back, it pulls it off the line and then it goes into certain neighborhoods. The neighborhoods that we're seeing, some of those neighborhoods have relatively new pipe, so obviously we know it's not coming from that neighborhood. So what we're doing is we have to look at those neighborhoods where it's occurring and see where that problem lies. So it's probably a section of pipe, and when I mean a section, it could be 600 feet to 1,000 feet that may be causing the disturbance, you know. People have to remember, we're running the water up the hill from the water treatment plant. The water treatment plant is at an elevation here, and the tanks are way up on Hot and Cold Lane, and that water is getting pushed up the hill, getting to receive a head, you know, a height in pressure gradient up there, and then it comes back down the hill, and then it may scour some of that material off. And that's where we're at. And I mean, progressively, I think that what's happened is it was a little bit, and then as you keep doing that, you know, it gets worse and worse. So in other words, the volume of that water coming back and forth now can keep moving some of that sediment and tearing it off that line. As you saw in the back, it's that either black or brown material. What we have to do is we're going to have our engineers and our consultants look at those areas that I think I've looked at. I've identified a lot of areas that from the complaints and from Facebook posts, etc. And so we have a good idea of where we think it's happening, but the migration of it goes, once it starts,
Yeah.
it goes everywhere. And people have to remember, it takes one little nodule of that manganese or iron, and it can go for a mile. You know, it just turbids the water, adds color to it, and it's just a very inconvenient situation to happen. And we're going to work at it. We're going to figure it out. We're going to manage the problem. Obviously, we can't throw, like Paul will tell you, we can't throw $100 million at the problem because, one, financially we couldn't do it. Number two, I don't know where everybody's going to drive for a couple of years because
Yeah.
we'll be tearing all these roads apart.
You have to move out.
It was big inconvenience when we did the Route 138 project.
Yeah.
Businesses were complaining, etc. But you know, I think I used a phrase at the time where, you know, when you're 2/3, you go to a dentist, and you know,
Yeah.
you got to deal with it, and once you're done with it, it's an improvement. And we don't believe that any of the new stuff is here. Paul will tell you that when the complaints started, I did come by. You know, as a water commissioner, I came by. I was just concerned, and I wanted to look at the facility because there was some information that, and it was false information, that the people here were doing some maintenance work at the facility, and that was not true. The water that left this facility, all the days that I've seen here, and all the days I've been prior to, what you see is not that. It used to be a lot different when we had the power plant on, because what would happen is if we'd stir that system up a little bit, the power plant would automatically, that water would flow so much, they were taking so much of our flow that it would just take it and release it down, and it wouldn't be so much of an
Just
inconvenience.
never noticed it. It was just,
Right.
they just didn't.
Now what happens is it stays within in the area, you know.
When we had that gas explosion in town, didn't the gas company replace most of their pipes after that, or?
On that New York Avenue explosion, that was, I lived on Connecticut, so I was right down from there. I think they're doing a lot of that now, and I think what they're doing is they're not really replacing the main. I think what they do is they put a valve in at the connection now, so if there's an instance where the gas line is hit, etc., and the flow increases so much, it shuts the gas off to that fossil. I think that's what they do. They are doing a lot of line replacement. Right, they're doing a lot of line replacement because they have a leak.
I thought they did it not long after that happened, which is a while ago now. I can't remember the year,
Yeah,
but.
I remember it because I was on a plane coming home from a vacation, and
Bob saw a roof go by his window.
and I got a call from my sister, and she said there was a house explosion, and she said, I think it's in Americana Terrace, and it was just up the street from my house. And the first thing I thought of is, wintertime, where are my guys digging? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
The
that's
excavations.
exactly right. That's-
And, I was concerned. I tried to cut a hold of everybody. And the gas company did call one of our people for a mock-out. And that person luckily wasn't on the site when that happened, but he was on his way. And that was a very tragic situation. And that's one of the things. But I think the gas coming now, we don't have so much of a leak issue, but what we have is we have this material that's in the line, but we're going to look at it. And not to say that we can't correct it here at the facility. You know what I mean? Because today there's all kinds of additional chemicals you can put in to bind that iron so it doesn't come out of that water solution. So that could be an approach to it. But we're going to look at that with the engineers. We're going to look at that with DEP, and we're going to really evaluate it, because like Paul says, they got this program going now and this study going on to make sure that what we've done in the past we can continue to use. You know what I mean? You don't want to spend a lot of money on a facility and then find out 5 years or 10 years down the road that now that you spent all this money, you've got to chase something else. Another issue comes up.
Technology is...
Right, and the technology changes also. When we put that plant online, that was the latest and greatest technology.
How old is this water treatment plant?
The treatment plant goes back to construction, I believe, was 1966. I believe it was put online in 68. The back facility, the newest treatment facility, was started construction in 92, late 92, early 93, and that was put online in July of 95.
Okay.
I remember that very well, because I was here for the shutdown of this facility and the turn off for that. And realistically, all we did was we changed the treatment technology. So the building here stayed the same. There was some minor changes in chemicals, etc., tanks, etc. But the majority of that was treatment itself, and that proved to be very worthwhile. It's going on its 30th year. The plant,
It's good value.
The facility here is going on, I forget, 60-some years, so the building itself. And the water system in 3 years will mark its 100th anniversary. So, there's been a lot of changes. And in the last 5 years, and Paul can attest to this, I know I started before I left, we've done a lot of changes to try to mitigate and be in compliance with the THM issue. And those compliance issues and the things that they've done were step-by-step procedures. In other words, let's start off with a small little thing to see if we can get through that project, to see where we are, and then we move to another step, where they did a GAC change out, then finally now you're at this aeration system at that tank itself. So I mean, they've constantly tried to chase it, and it's taken them a while, and it normally does, because you want to look at the value for the technology, and you want to not overspend the money. You just want to make sure. I mean, if you call an engineer, Paul will tell you right off the bat. If you say, hey, you know what, I want to solve it, I don't want to hear this no more, this and that, it's going to cost a lot of money. But the state and the engineer and the town work together all the time to look at the progression of the project. Did this do it? Nope, let's go to the next step. And that's why you go into what they call a consent order with DEP. And that consent order allows you to go through this process to find out what's the most financially beneficial solution to the problem at hand. That's what I got.
You have to consider you could have a major sewer project coming in.
Yeah, we have.
Distant future.
Paul will tell you, we have, the elephant in the room is the wastewater facility. I was superintendent and plant manager here, and in 2015 I became superintendent of water and sewer. And at that particular time, we started working with the EPA and try to get an idea of where we were going to be with this facility, because we knew it's going to be a big project, and we wanted to move forward as quickly as possible, maybe put it in small stages to get that way. But until we obtain a permit from the EPA, which says, this is what we're going to regulate, this is what we're going to do for you, we're kind of at a standstill.
Yeah.
But that facility is going to cost us a significant amount of money. And it's not that we're going to have an option of not doing it or prolonging it, because the EPA is going to be driving the bus. They're going to tell you, this is what we want you to comply with, this is the timetable to comply within, this is the table you're going to get all these situations under control, and then you move forward.
And what we have done since the inception of this document because this thing basically was very broad brushed. So what we've done in the past two or 3 years is meet with the engineers and say, no, we don't care for that document the way it is as it relates to wastewater. Show us something that is more palatable to us in terms of being able to take small bites at it. The other thing is, as Bob mentioned, at some point we're going to get our permit. We want to get a jump on that now and do as much as we can for planning, because we don't want DEP to say to us, and DEP is the state branch of EPA, we don't want them to say to us, well, how come you guys haven't done anything? We want to be proactive and say, wait, we've done this, we've done that, we've done the other thing, and we're going to be proceeding on that as soon as we get the permit and we put our finances in order so we can allocate funds to those projects. I'm sorry, Bob, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. And what actually happens is, at that particular point in time, when we asked the EPA, what can we move forward with, their answer to us was, you really have to wait to see where we're going. Yeah. And that's where that's the quagmire with the wastewater plant. And that's going to, and unfortunately, Paul will tell you, when the letter comes down, we have like a 90-day cycle, I think, or 60 days to give our response back.
Yes.
And that's why, when we talk about, people say, oh, they're going to do a rate study, this and that. Well, what you have to do is, when that wastewater project comes up, the EPA wants to determine what the financial impact is going to be on the community. And that's why you want to have that number available. And say, hey, you know what, we got this project going, that project going, this is all we can bond for. And you may have some ability to lessen the impact. The other thing is that we want to build a facility, and I think Paul will agree, that we want to have our employees be able to handle it, because we think that's the most beneficial option, is to not bring an outside company in to run the facility. It's train our people to run the facility, just like we do at water. And we have some great people at wastewater, and we hope that we can retain them there and stay, and they can go with us for this new step forward. But that's what we're trying to do, just like in the water issue.
Yeah, the sewer plant has a whole different story. We could do another show on
it does, but
well.
if I could just conclude with this one relative to at least to the wastewater part of it, is that Bob's opinion is 100% correct. I feel the same. The reason why I feel like that is because by having a honest-to-goodness, fully functioning, EPA permitted wastewater plant in Somerset also opens the door for Swansea and Dayton, where we could regionalize. And the beauty part of that is we have two new funding sources that can participate. We can spread out the rate payments among 3 facilities instead of just one. So that's what we're looking at long term. We've had very, very generalized discussions with both communities about this for future. But like I say, it's way out on the curve. But it has to start with us, getting our house in order and making sure that we can go forward with that. But in terms of financing, if we could ever pull that off.
And you've discussed selling water as well, right?
Oh, we have an IMA in progress that's being reviewed by the attorneys now, that will see us selling water to Swansea if everything goes through. It looks like a really good situation for us, because they could take up to 1 million gallons a day, which puts us basically halfway back to where we were with the power plant.
Right.
So if we can do that, that'd be
Because
nice.
people don't realize that the town actually lost a lot of money when the power plant stopped buying water. Right?
Yeah.
That was
But
one of the
affected-
impacts, besides just the taxes.
Right.
Yeah.
Affected the water rates, because Brayton was the biggest contributor to the water rate. People don't realize they took maybe half of what we could produce, but they paid almost 75% of the cost of operations. And the reason they did that is because they were the people who pretty much set the demand. So at that time, we said, hey, and we discussed it with Brayton a few times, that we said, hey, you have to be, if you want us to provide you with this amount of water, you have to pay this rate, because we feel that you're going to take a lot of it, and we have to put our people on, to make sure that we can supply you. So that's what it was.
Plus infrastructure, right?
Right.
We had to make, I'm
Right.
sure to accommodate Brayton Point,
Yeah.
we had to make infrastructure. That's why we have those big tanks on Hot and Cold Lane these days.
And that was the reason why we wanted an award from the federal government to do some work just before I left. I think we were doing it while I was leaving for some improvement projects, because the feds looked at us and said, hey, you lost, this large coal-fired power plant, and we should try to compensate you for some of the things that you have to do. So that was one of them. And the other grant that came through because we lost Brayton was the solar grant that you see on the grounds now that provides some solar electricity to the facility. So that was two of the things that came up. So it was a big loss. It was only tax loss. It was, I think, the water and sewer department. I think we lost almost, I would say it was probably close to $3 million a year. So that, of course, where does that go? Because we had to shift some of that as best we could back to the ratepayers, and unfortunately that drove the rate up too.
There's no other way when
Right.
things like that happen. It's catastrophic for us.
Because, and people have to understand that the Somerset system, both water and sewer, everyone is a stakeholder. So in other words, the people who live here, own property here, realistically are the owners of these two systems. And what has to happen is we have to generate revenue to make improvements and modifications to the system as things go on. The situation with the dirty water issue that's going on and the discoloration and turbidity, we're going to get through it. It's not a big thing. I mean, it's a big thing because people don't understand the problem that it generated, and they don't understand why is it occurring and why does it keep happening. We're going to get to it. We're going to solve it. We have some targeted things that we're going to do within the next month or two that we think will diminish some of that. And once that gets diminished to a point, but we're really going to look at what we do here and what we see out there. And that's the only way that we're going to stop, this from happening. I can tell you that when I had Brayton here, and Brayton would call for a lot of water, I would turn a pump on, and then we would get a little bit of discoloration. And what would happen is we had to learn how to manage the facility so that we would mitigate that. And that was by operations of the facility with the operators, how they turn the facilities on and off, et cetera, or how they, realistically at that time, we never shut the plant down. It was because the Brayton was always on us, how we increased or decreased the flow. And that's what we did. We had to buy new pumping control equipment that we could ramp up very slowly and bring down very slowly. So that would minimize that. So a lot of things are going to get looked at. And Paul will tell you, and I will tell you, there's been a lot of things that have changed in 5 years to try to get this THM issue. Because when I came down and I spoke to Paul the first time, I said, hey, these are all the things. And every one of those things, no matter how small it could be, has some type of impact on water quality. So we have to look at that again and say, was our engineering correct then? Did we do the right thing? Is there another change that we have to make to go and make this better? We don't want to do this. We don't want to have this type of situation happen in our community. We're going to continue to do what we have to do, which is we respond, we flush, and we move that system. And then what we have to do is we're going to look at that as a benefit to what's the financial way to deal with this and what we have to do to get it to solve the problem. Some of the problem is going to be pipeline replacement. Some of the problem is going to be plant operations. Some of the problem could be chemical addition. We don't know until we get all our hands around it and look at it. What we've done so far is we've looked at some of the plant operation stuff. I've compiled lists of areas where this is happening, and we're gonna study those and look at that, and we're gonna come up with a solution that's gonna do it. This is not, the people have to remember that we had a very big incident that happened to us with the hydro seeding incident when they built the bridge.
I remember that.
And that was a big thing. And what had happened was we had a person put hydro seed and some fertilizer backflowed into the water system near the construction of the new bridge. The people don't realize that the person that was most affected there was the Somerset Ridge Nursing Home. And that completely plugged the 8-inch water main that serviced that facility. It was completely plugged. So immediately, they got people in, unplugged that. We went through all kinds of testing, all kinds of operation. That was specifically a health issue. Okay. What we have right now is not a health issue. It's just an aesthetic issue.
Right.
And people look at it and say, "Hey, is it safe to drink?" And we have to tell them, "Yeah, it's safe to drink, but we can understand your concern."
Right.
Okay.
You saw Johnny drink it.
Right.
Yes.
And I drink town water. People say, "Oh, I said, no, I drink town water every day. I know where it comes from. I know how it's treated. I'm good with it." But when you have a discoloration issue or a turbidity issue that happens, people question that, and that's what we got to make sure they're good. The quote when we had the hydro seeding incident is,
Yeah, that's a
one person asked me, and I was down there, and I remember where it was. It was at the old Civil Defense Building down on Riverside Avenue. And I said to the reporters, I've been telling people for 20 years that it's okay to drink the water. And today I got to tell them it's not okay until we figure it out.
As
And
I can,
that's a bad place to be.
as I can remember, we couldn't drink it for a week. We had
Right,
to wait.
we had a week. Right, we had a week. We had myself. I was the superintendent plant manager at the time. I had an operator, Bob Sear. I don't think him and I slept for 4 days because we would be constantly out there testing. I think that was on the end. We got the town cleared up within a week. Somerset Ridge, we didn't clear up for a couple of months. And that was,
I can remember people at the Emergency Management Agency handing out bottled water to people.
Yeah, it's a sad day. As a matter of fact, if you go to Mass Waterworks, if you go to the classes for operators training, etc., they have. I submitted once everything was completed. I submitted copies of all the materials. They have the newscasts and that, and they show the people what actually happened and what we complied with. We were very fortunate. Number one. And I say this every day, people, you have to listen. When someone makes a complaint, you have to listen. And the complaint that ticked me off of where it was going and where it came from was there was a restaurant, Chinese restaurant on Slates Ferry Avenue, and when the fire pump used to kick on at the Somerset Ridge, he was always complaining that the water would get dirty. So we automatically knew where the flow of water was coming up from. So that water flowed there. Fortunately for us, that system was pretty much isolated because of check valves and the pumping stations that we had set it up for. So it was relatively easier to clean. We monitored the whole town though. We went through state protocols, monitored the whole town just like we're doing now with this iron and manganese thing. Paul will tell you they're analyzing iron and manganese from sites that the state specifies. It's not what we specify, it's the state. The state comes in and they say, hey, you know what, we've got a complaint. They've talked to Paul. And Paul has talked to the commissioners and we say, hey, whatever we got to do, we do. But in that instance, we had to comply. And we wanted to really get the water back on pretty quick because we really didn't know what was in that truck.
Now, if people have a problem with discoloration with water, what should they do? Should they call the water
Call us.
department?
Call us.
I know they always complain on Facebook.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that we understand. But all it takes is a call. When we get a call of discolored water, we send somebody out there to do flushing, which is, we open a hydrant and we'll do that 2 or 3 times to make sure that everything is good. Sometimes, George, it comes back, but we don't stop. People call, they have a problem, call us. We have some people that, have called more than once, to ask if or tell us what problems that they're having. Occasionally we'll get a call from somebody who might have a chlorine smell. We'll send one of our techs out there to take some samples of the water to check for chlorine residual, just to make sure it's in spec. The maximum is something like 4. We're typically not even at 1. So it's typically not a problem. I don't know if there's some chemical anomaly that can happen that makes them smell it. I just don't know. In some cases, we've had people who swear up and down that they can smell chlorine. Fine, we'll go out, we'll run a test, just to be sure, because, obviously, we're not here to ignore, as Bob indicated before, to indicate signs that people might be giving us that there's a problem. So we want to catch it, as fast as we can.
Now, I live on Main Street, and I have a friend who lives maybe 5 or 6 houses down. She told me she was having a big problem with discolored water, yet my water was perfectly clear. What might be the reason for that?
Well, if your water is clear, and I'm assuming maybe some of the folks around you, maybe their water, it could be her service line into the house. It could be it is in her water heater.
Yeah. That's what we're finding a lot of right now.
Because that water, so what'll happen is, because obviously it's cold water that goes to the water heater to fill the heater up, then that can be stored in there, for maybe a couple of days before it actually gets used. So the cold water side will have cleaned up, but that hot water side is still in that tank until it finally runs its way through. But once again, I would suggest if she has a problem, call us. We'll be happy to go out there and do some flushing on her behalf, just to make sure that she's comfortable.
Yeah. Right now, what we're finding is that what actually happens with iron and some manganese, as the water elevation temperature goes up, the iron precipitates out of solution, and that's why they're finding it in their tanks. So in other words, if they've gotten a little bit of that gray, yellow, brownish water in there, once it gets heated up or oxidized, etc., then it really comes out of solution, and then that's what's in it. Suggestion is always water tanks should be flushed every year, hot water tanks. So, I mean, I know that I just replaced mine a year back, and I think that's what, you got to look at that also. So when you take a sample and you see it, make sure it's in the cold water only, and that way it'll narrow it down. Also, we've gotten, Paul will tell you, we've gotten a lot of complaints, etc. We log the complaints in by date, by location, and we ask the people what the description if they provide it to us.
Right.
We want to know that. And that's why, I went on Facebook, I saw the comments, I went backwards, I found where they were living, so that we could determine, hey, where is the areas that the problem is occurring? Because some of the people speak on Facebook, but they don't call us. For whatever reason, we don't know. And that's why we want to know, if it's legitimate and if there's a complaint, we want to know where it is. And we looked at that and we say, hey, this is where the areas could be, and that's what's going to help us. The thing that's going to help us, we can't monitor the system 24/7, but the residents can tell us what's happening. And that's how we have to deal with it. We have to always deal with what you say, what you see, so we can solve the problem.
Do you, can you recommend filters sometimes, or do you do that?
I mean, it's up to the individuals.
Yeah.
I don't have a filter on my home. If anybody wants to come in, they can inspect it. It's fine. I don't mind. But I don't believe in a filter. Filters are okay, but what happens is sometimes the filter doesn't get changed enough. It can cause some other problems. You know what I mean?
You get the wrong micron size.
It's sizes. You buy the wrong type of filter and you expect it to last. There's specifics to it. So. We always say to people, hey, you know what? And I always say to people, if you're going to buy a filter, you have to maintain it. That's one of the things that you maintain the filter, you maintain the cartridge that it sits in, and you buy the correct type of filter. Paper filters are very inefficient because they're very expensive. You end up throwing them away. Carbon filter is okay for taste and odors, but it's not going to be for sediment. Right. The best type of filters are a hard ceramic filter. And the reason you want to buy a hard ceramic filter is you can wash it. So what happens is if you feel that it's getting a little gummy or gunky or you see stuff on it, iron and manganese, what you can do is you take a little bit of lemon juice or lime juice, you put it in water, you put the filter in there, you clean it up, and you can put it back in, and it saves you. I'm not a fan of filters because people don't maintain them. That's the issue.
So the problem gets worse because all of a sudden, the brown water all of a sudden becomes no pressure.
Right.
Because the filter's clogged up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're good with them and and that's what you want to be, that's fine.
Right.
We don't. But our water leaving here meets all the standards. And, that's what we have to say. We have to say, guess what? We provide it. We understand that, every now and then something's going to happen. And, somebody opens up a fire hydrant to do
Yes.
a test. Somebody uses a fire hydrant for water, for construction, etc. That happens all the time. So.
George, one of the things that I'd like to get across also, because, some might say, well, what does the water department do? Because they charge infrastructure fees, they charge this. I would just like, if you don't mind, I'd just like to read off a list of projects that are in various stages of progress even now. So if I could do that. The first one, pardon me, the hydrant replacement program, and you've heard me talk about that ad nauseum, but that is in progress. Water main replacement is in progress. That's what we spoke about before. Presently, we're doing a project on Annette Avenue. We have other projects waiting in the wings. Gray Street, I think, is going to be next, and we're waiting on the ARPA funding. Once I get the money in hand, then I can go ahead and proceed with that. So that's in progress. Improvements to the hot and cold lane storage tanks. That project is completed, the first phase of it. That was a $1.2 million project to handle the THM non-compliance. By the way, that was the only water quality issue that we had been in non-compliance with was the THMs. And only certain times of the year and only certain years were we in non-compliance. It was not a consistent thing. So what we've done now is we believe we have the problem corrected so that we will get the consistency of meeting that THM requirement that we need to have. We also have the dam resiliency project. We're going to be awarding that construction contract tonight. So that's going to be a 1.8, almost $2 million project that people will be able to see ongoing. That's to protect the dam in the event of a horrific rainstorm such as we're experiencing now down in Florida. We're going to raise the freeboard all around it so that we have more storage capacity. Eventually we'll be changing the spillway. Under this first contract that will be awarded tonight, we're going to be changing the inlet structure. I don't know if that was pointed out to you, but that's the point where the water comes out of the reservoir and is conducted through piping and gate system to the treatment process. So that project is going to be underway. System-wide water analysis. We've both alluded to that in the course of the discussion, but I want to give you some specifics on that. Our consultant is presently under contract and is presently working on this to evaluate and analyze the water that comes to our system, in other words, the raw water. In addition, they will be analyzing the water that leaves the plant. So now they can see this is how it comes in, this is how it leaves. We already know that we meet water quality standards here today. What happens if DEP decides they want us to meet additional requirements? Upshot of the whole thing, the treatment process. So if we know what we have coming in and what's going out today and what we might need in the future, that's what the study will determine. So we make targeted improvements to that treatment facility there, so we're not, blow the whole thing up and start over again. That may be what they come back with. I don't know, but we're anticipating that we'll be able to do it incrementally to avoid, a big, huge bond issue.
Yeah, the last time that was done was 5 years ago, just before I left. We had an analysis done. When the issue of THMs came up, we did the exact same thing. Now it's going to be good to see what has transpired over 5 years
Exactly.
to the supply.
Exactly. Another one is lead service identification. We touched upon that a little bit. That's also in progress. There's a town-wide study underway to try to determine if we have any lead goosenecks. That's what if there's any left in town, which there very well could be, we feel that would be our problem as opposed to a whole length of service, because that gooseneck is designed so that if somebody ever grabs onto the water service for some reason, it stretches that loop. It's just a loop in the pipe. That's what the gooseneck is. It'll stretch that out before it breaks the corporation in the main, which you'd have to replace. It can be very costly. So that study is ongoing right now. We also have the 3 clarifiers that you guys saw out there that John was explaining to you how they function. We have a new design that just started probably a month or so ago to renovate those in place. we believe that we can have those completely rebuilt so that they function better than new because technology has changed in the 30 years that they have been in there. So that's underway. We're looking at a project to actually do the construction maybe next spring. We have the money for that. We've budgeted through special articles, and also we have a grant that we're going to be applying so we can hopefully get all three of those units done. And that's basically it, but I just want to let you know that we have more projects that we're thinking about, and as finances, as I'm sorry, what?
I was just giving him 5 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We gotta start wrapping.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, we could be.
I got one other question. and
Okay.
I know we could go on forever.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about the fluoride issue that has been brought up during the past year? Should the fluoride be in the water or not?
You want to answer first, or?
Sure, I'll answer it. People have asked me about it, and this is my response. The parents of children who get the beneficial effect of fluoride are the ones that should vote to keep it or remove it. I have no opinion. I have grandchildren. In my personal opinion, I think that the fluoride is beneficial. But let the voters decide that issue. And that's what it's going to come down to being. When it came up at candidates night, I said the same thing. What happened was it was voted in by election. It should, if a question comes up, that question should be placed on the ballot. People wonder, oh, geez, why did the well take so long, et cetera, going through that? It was because at the time they thought the state thought the only water supply that we were using is at the treatment plant. They didn't consider that the well was an additional supply. That's why the year lapsed. They should speak to their dentist and their doctors about it. That's it, and get that opinion and make a valued vote on what you believe and what your advice is to be.
I would pretty much mirror that. For us, it's a completely inexpensive item. It's like $10,000 a year for labor and materials. So I'm ambivalent toward it, but I would agree with what Bob says. I do think it has a dental benefit. But if the people in town don't want it, it's not going to break either of our hearts if we have to eliminate it. So that's how we feel. We're not strong advocates for it, on either side, either for it or against it.
Right. The only thing is that when I was here and I used to sit as the superintendent and plant manager, a lot of parents used to call and say, my pediatrician wants to know if there's fluoride in the Somerset water. And I'd say, yes, there is. And I'd ask them, why did the pediatrician want to know? Because they said because the pediatrician would consider putting them on a fluoride treatment system.
Oh, nice.
So that's it. So basically,
Completely different than what you'd think, right?
Right.
You would think they were going to
Am I
be.
remembering this correctly? But didn't the water department receive some awards related to that?
oh yeah, we had a
Because I remember Mr. Bowers coming to me.
yes, we did. We had a lot of fluoride awards over the years. We won an outstanding middle operations award. Where they rate plants by their size. We won an award for that one year. There's been a lot of awards over the years. People should be pretty proud of the facility and pretty proud of the people that work here. The people that work here have their heart and soul in it. You have to remember that. And it is what it is. I mean, is there going to be good days? Yep. Is there going to be some bad days? I can assure you there are some bad days because I've been down this road. I used to tell people I've stubbed my toe many a times. You learn a lesson and then you move on. And it's
I have
not
to
gonna
say,
hold
though,
us back.
Bob has been a great help to me in preventing, as much as possible, me doing things. He's been a great asset. His history of the system is really what has been very
I
beneficial
don't know
to
how you
me.
could have a better resource than him with how long he's.
Yeah, I'll give you one little story, and that's the end of it. I got a call. I don't know. Was it last fall, Paul? About a water break on Hot and Coal Lane, and Hot and Coal Lane is a very complex system of valves and operations, and the guys were out there at night in the pouring rain to try to fix this issue. And
I remember this.
they called me a couple of times. And at 9 o'clock, they called me and I said, do you mind if I go up there and try to see if I can help you out? And they said, oh no, the more the merrier, come on up. So they went up there and we kind of got together, figured everything out, and they got it shut down and they repaired it. And I was happy to help them. And that's all I'm here for. I didn't take it because I wanted to be a political guy, because I'm not a political guy. I'm a technical guy. And I think of things as right and wrong and good or bad. That's how we had to approach all of this stuff. And, you know, over the years, Somerset's had a lot of good things. And, you know, like I said when I left, we'll figure them all out. It may take a little time, but we're going to figure it all out. And this little problem that comes up now, it's not a little problem. It affected a lot of people. It's a problem. We're going to figure it out. We're going to get through it. We want to figure it out now so that we don't have to deal with it again. Right, Paul?
100%.
That's what we want to do. And that's what we're going to do.
Okay. I hope you learned a lot about Somerset's water system today and what they are doing to improve the water quality in town. We will keep an eye on it, and we will see you next time on Somerset Showcase.